call this workshop to order. Who's calling the roll tonight? Is that you, Carrie? Carrie's calling the roll tonight? That's Carrie.
Counselor Weasel.
Here.
Counselor Waller.
Here.
Counselor Hamblin.
Here.
Counselor Lee.
Here.
Counselor Exner.
Here.
Counselor Schultz.
Here.
Sorry. Mayor Pauline.
Here. Per usual tradition, we'll start with a quick agenda review for tonight's meeting, and then we'll get into our work session. A really fun meeting tonight, big meeting tonight, but short on items. Tonight at the work session, we're going to be discussing the utility rate assistance program. As you guys know, it's our second meeting on this topic with our wastewater utility rate increases. We have consent agenda. There has been some discussions between Councilor Peetzold and I of bumping public comment to after our presentation tonight on the Parks and Rec survey results. I mean, we have two people here in the audience. We may get more, who knows? But the idea being is there's probably not much to address the council on, but we'll have our survey results, and there may then be something to address the council instead of me having a back and forth. This isn't the time to talk. I would prefer to just wait until
That's a good idea.
that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Make it easy.
Make it easy. After that, we'll just go into our reports from the city manager and then committee and councilor reports. Jordan, utility rate assistance programs.
Right.
And Mike, I believe.
Yep.
So real
Oh,
quick,
Mike.
just one point for when we get to our official meeting, we'll need to make an official change in the agenda.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I think you have copies of Mike's report as an add to the brief staff report. This is the second work session on this topic of having a rate assistance program for our utilities, in particular our sewer rates. This is a topic that councilors expressed interest in as we looked at our sewer project and the rate model. We looked at other comparable programs in other cities of similar sizes and had a good conversation at the previous work session about what a program might look like for the city of Sandy. So we did some additional research and did some outreach to some of those third-party organizations that may have an interest in partnering with us, and not a whole lot of luck so far on that. But we wanted to start kind of forming this program and get your direction tonight on if we're in the right direction, if this is a program that sounds consistent with your direction, so that we can get this in place, basically start working on getting this in place this month and then have it in place next month, so when the rates are in effect, we have this program that people can apply for to have financial assistance. So I'll turn it over to Mike to kind of do more of the details on what we've sort of proposed here.
Yeah, we originally the little matrix we worked up had 9 or 10 cities in it, so we kind of distilled it down to 3. And one thing that they had in common with Sandy was the median household income. You know, we had Westland's program in here. Their median household income was quite a bit higher. We had Gladstone, Milwaukee, theirs is quite a bit lower. With Wilsonville, theirs is quite a bit higher. So we kind of tried to narrow it into a range where the programs were all similar and where the income characteristics in the cities were the same. And so we came up with Canby, Oregon City, and Troutdale. They all offer a discount that ranges from 30 to 50%. The duration of the eligibility is the same in all 3 cities. The income level was pretty close. You know, the income level they used to determine eligibility is pretty close for all 3 cities. And their typical monthly bill for sewer was pretty close to where we will be now that these new rates are in effect. So just to simplify things, we recommending something what these cities are already doing, and a 50% discount on the sewer portion of the bill only, and this would reduce the typical bill, which is for a customer using 600 cubic feet a month, by about $26. So the net increase in the sewer portion of the bill monthly would be about $1.52, I think. So this would really bring it back down for qualifying customers to roughly where the existing rates are at. And then, one thing that was common with all these, I guess, Canby and Troutdale only discount the, sewer portion of the bill. Oregon City applies, a total discount to water, stormwater. They have a $16 a month street maintenance, street utility fee, and, sewer, water, and storm. So that, they just knock that amount off the total part of the bill, and it adds up to about 50%. And then, as Jordan mentioned, we haven't had a lot of luck trying to find either some department within the city or a community service agency in the city to vet these applications and determine eligibility. That's kind of where we want to go with it. But we even offered, the same cost per application that these agencies get for processing energy assistance for low-income customers, and nobody was interested in taking this on. So I think we'll do it we're gonna recommend that we do it with city staff. And then, we kind of went through the demographic information we have, and about 6.2% of Sandy residents are at or below the federal poverty income guideline levels. And, so, we don't think that's gonna be a great administrative burden to do this once a year to vet applications. That's about 200 customers out of all of our residential customers. And that's assuming everybody, that falls in that income guideline actually pays a utility bill at their home. A lot of these customers may be tenants in rental housing. And so, these are kind of conservative estimates we have here. So I don't think that, the worst case would be 200 customers. It's probably unlikely it would be that many. And then we use that as well to see what the revenue impacts would be on the sewer utility. And we figured it would be about $50,000 a year, $48,000 a year, which is going to be about 0.2% of the total rate revenue that we would expect once these new rates go into effect. One other thing I did point out, just some of the footnotes here. Troutdale funds Troutdale, I think in Gladstone, but Gladstone's not in our comparison here. Troutdale funds theirs with the contribution from the general fund. Everybody else just takes it out of the utility rates. That's a subsidy out of the utility system. And then Troutdale, Oregon City, and Canby have a flat rate for sewer service for any residential customer. So that distinguishes them from the typical bill here in Sandy, which can vary based on the amount of water used. And I think that's all we have.
Thinking more about the third party versus in-house, it's understandable why maybe other agencies wouldn't want to take on, sort of that process. But one thing it does for us too is it gives staff like a tool to direct people if they, qualify. If they get calls about not being able to afford bills or struggling 1 month or whatever, and having that instead of redirecting them to another organization when we're hoop jump through, staff can answer that call or take that person and have a program that the city offers, and so there's sort of a natural easier process I think for staff and a customer too when it's from the same agency when they're calling, hey, I need to pay the city of Sandy, but I can't afford it. Hey, we have a program for you. Here's how you can apply. Here's what it includes.
Councilor Exner?
So, a couple questions. One is the year's benefit for that 50% off is, what's the purpose of that? Is that, because that's just in 1 year they're going to have the troubles if they're having troubles today, or do we anticipate they're going to make more money? I'm thinking these are mostly people on Social Security. I saw, I'm on Social Security. I saw I got a 1.6% increase this year, and I'm really excited about the $35 that it's going to make. So what's the year?
This would be monthly. There would be a new rate essentially for this class of customer.
Sure.
And it would be 50% of the residential single-family rate.
Are you talking about applying annually?
Yeah, you said that the duration is 1 year,
Mhm.
proposing it.
I think because of the
That's what I was
documentation that you would need to submit, what was your income for the prior year or whatever.
Right.
And, people do have some circumstances where maybe they're unemployed for a year or they get a new job, another household member moves in with them and that bumps them over the threshold. The circumstances change.
Yeah, I guess I was focusing on the old people, comments on this one, and thinking to myself, some of these folks are probably not gonna change very much. Have you thought about maybe giving them some advice or maybe helping them to figure out how they're using the water-saving shower heads, brick in the toilet, if you do that still? Do you still do that?
What?
Put a brick in the toilet.
Is that, I don't know, man.
When did we do that? When did we? Yeah, when
How
was
to
that?
dig a deep enough hole so your outhouse.
Oh, I
will
get it.
be
I am
longer
old,
than
I suppose.
water.
Not in
Right.
this century,
Offset
it's
that.
We did put something out in
Bimini.
the newsletter prior to this one, saying that, this is coming up and that, the best way to reduce your utility bill is to use less water or sewer. And so we did offer, these low-flow shower heads, low-flow faucet aerators, these little conservation kits. I think we had about a half dozen people sign up, so we'll get those out to those people. But the housing stock in Sandy's pretty new, and these items have been required in all new construction since like 1993. So, we are trying to get the word out to people about how they
Sure,
can
sure.
have some impact on their utility bills, whether they qualify for this program or not, just have usage consumption.
Okay.
Counselor Hamlin?
So, did you have another half?
Were you done?
Nope.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So kind of a two-parter. One is are we gonna do income verification? I think I heard a little bit of a answer. Okay, and then the second piece, and I just completely lost it out of my brain. Oh, for application cycle, it sounded like you were saying we're gonna do it once a year.
That was
And
mine.
my
Yes.
concern is that, we have people moving in and out all the time. And so if somebody moves in April, if they missed it in January, or is it just that we're gonna do 200 in a year?
Yeah, it would be, anybody who qualified would apply at any time, and they would
Okay.
have to apply within the next 12 months to retain it. So I think it's more like, just to be, it's not to put a burden on people, but, once a year isn't too onerous for this kind of a benefit. And so it's just to make sure that, people are getting the benefit, and those people who deserve it get it, and those people who don't, do not.
But a quick follow-up, if my once a year might be June and John's might be August.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Yep, Counselor Smalley.
How hard would it be to put something on the website with like suggestions for people to reduce water consumption, just like places that they could go? I was just trying to think of an inexpensive method that we could help maybe get that out to people of, hey, here's some ways that you can reduce your water usage.
Like a brick.
Like a break.
Or have
I
the
think we
fire
should issue a
department come
brick to
fill your
everybody.
bathtub.
Sure, there's always that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, lawn watering tips.
yeah,
you
just
know.
maybe some ideas, so, resource that people can go to, that staff, maybe as people call with questions or concerns, that they can be referred to, hey, if you go to our website under this, there's some information there for you.
Yeah, we belong to the Regional Water Purveyors Consortium, and so they have a lot of good conservation tips, and they put on those little public service
Mhm.
announcements you see in the summer about
Mhm.
summer water use. And so we have a link on our website there, it's kind of hard to get to.
And that's my
And their
concern.
website has a link back to us too, so
Yeah.
that's the best way to get the word out. But
Okay.
we can definitely make that a little more prominent.
Yeah, maybe
We're going through
let's make that a
a
little easier to
redesign on the
find.
website, and maybe that will be a little easier to
Mhm.
make more prominent.
I'm gonna go Counselor Lee, Peetzold, and then over to Exner.
Don't we also put things like that on the back of the utility bills where people will see it fairly quickly?
Well, we did this thing, for the November, December bill.
Mhm.
No, I guess it was for the October, November bill. And we got, 6 people sign up, so, that was in the utility bill newsletter, so that,
Mhm.
that's about as effective as the utility bill newsletter is.
So you could put the website on there with the savings
Yeah,
items.
we could have it on we have a standard template for the bill,
Mhm.
so we could just put that on there and leave it on there.
Counselor Pearsall?
Yeah, just, you mentioned it a little bit, that it wouldn't take much of your staff time, but just curiosity on the technical debt, as I like to call it, the added workload, to your staff. I know we're, tight on staff, and, we always hear that, you know, we have a lot to do in that time frame, and we're now adding that. The way I read it, is there gonna be a $25 application fee as well, or is that in that, what is it?
I mean,
Oh, no, that's what we would have reimbursed if
We
we
would
had
have
had a
reimbursed
third party
more
to
than
do
the
it for us.
organization.
Okay.
That's what we would do.
So, what you mentioned there was that you don't believe that this will put any additional burden on your staff.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Well, it's easy for me to say that, but,
Yeah, you're the manager,
yeah,
so.
Just tell you
But,
guys.
you know, I think, it's not too onerous, you basically have to bring in a W-2 or some kind of proof of income. And if you know, or, the forms we've been seeing from the other cities, it's pretty straightforward, and there wouldn't be a lot of, manipulation needed to, if people, I think the toughest thing is gonna tell people, no.
Professional judgment.
We need something a little more, comprehensive than what you just gave us. You know, that will take more time. Once if people
Right.
give us the information we're asking for, it'll go very quickly, but that rarely happens, so you end up having to call somebody up and say, no, we actually need more information on this or that, you know, that's really the time consuming.
And are we keeping that information for the year, or are we handing it back to them? Are we keeping it electronically or paper
And
format?
we will have to find some sort of way to secure that information, because
Right.
it's personal
PII.
information. And we, you know, we could redact it and just keep, you know, the personal information and anonymize it so that people just, you wouldn't have any, you know, name or address associated with that. I don't know, we don't have to, that's a good.
I guess I question the PII and that paper,
Yeah.
that loose out there,
Yeah.
and then it will cost to store online and those type of things, and that information coming from that background, so there's a little bit more technical debt that is associated to this.
It would be
What's
these, would be
PII,
just to
Jeremy?
return it to the customer when we're done doing.
Your
the,
personal information,
vetting.
Personally identifiable.
preventable information.
Counselor Exner?
Yeah, in terms of expenses, and I'm thinking that there may be like an individual who's got a house and they've got a leak of some kind. I have a friend of mine here in Sandy, 3 years ago, had a leak in his front house, and it was like $300 in the old rates. So it's pretty impactful, you know, for them if they hadn't been working. I can imagine that somebody on limited income get a $300 bill, that would be tough. In my phone, when I'm out of the country and I use up all of my data, which is starting to cost me quite a bit of money, I get a text message that says your data usage is up at a certain point, or $100 or something like that. I know as we move toward the electronic meters, is there a chance of, or a way of texting somebody or emailing somebody and says your utility use of your water is now 200% of what you normally would expect, or 200% of what it averages, and ping them so that they could say, oh, got a leak probably, or maybe a
Yeah,
kid
that-
that likes to use the toilet
that-
too much.
That benefits any customer, not just, you know, people who qualify for this program. So,
Mhm.
yeah, that's something we will have with these smart meters.
Okay.
But, you know, right now, if you have a water leak that happens outside your home, you'll get a full credit on your sewer bill, because, you know, that doesn't go down the drain. And we provide you a partial credit against your water bill for that. So it never affects the sewer bill, you know, leak
Oh, okay.
outside the building.
So what's the department that's gonna be processing these? I see that the applications will be at the Action Center, City Hall, and the Community Center. I know we've had some conversations about, cause the Community Center does some energy assistance, but you probably, I don't know where you pay your utility, I guess probably right when you come in. Who's gonna process this? Who's doing it?
Utility billing,
Yeah.
on the city hall side.
So you just grab your application at the community center, but you drop
And
it
then
off
bring it
over
here
at
and
the
drop it
utility.
off, the
Well,
same place you would drop off a bill.
Are we gonna allow people to turn it in at the community center? I don't see why we wouldn't do that.
Except for PII.
Yeah, I was thinking your little phrase as I said my sentence, yeah, maybe.
Sealed envelopes and,
Yeah.
you know, in our office mail.
Yeah, we wanna make sure
I
that
would rather not.
people would have the application form, which
City Hall's
tells
pretty
them
easy to get to.
what they need to submit with the
Not till I get
form.
that
We work in education, sorry.
We have the, form submitted to City Hall, but you could pick up the form at various locations around the city, but to turn it in, it has to come here.
Okay.
I think that's how we set it up.
I like it. I'm good with it. We need to give them direction now. I see a lot of nodding heads.
Like it.
Yeah.
I did want to point out one thing, you know, we trying to set this up so we get the word out now, so that when the bills go out, it'll be towards the end of this month, that, there's a backstop for people, and, you know, they know about this in advance, and we even try and process some of the applications up front, so they would be ready, but you'd see, you'd have a resolution, at the first meeting in February to make this effective. Unfortunately, resolutions can go into effect immediately, and so we wouldn't have to wait for a second reading or 30 days. It just happened right now.
Perfect.
So they haven't gone into effect yet?
This month.
With the bill you received this month, will have the new rates on it.
But the one I received at the end of December was not the new rates?
No.
Then why was
Stop
my bill so much
running
higher?
your water. You don't need to be running that sprinkler,
I
Bethany.
literally thought we started already.
All right. Anything else before I close work session?
No, thanks for your
Thanks,
work
Mike.
on that.
We'll close work session, reconvene at 7 for a regular meeting.
I think it was. My bill was clear.
Bang, bang,
It was
bang,
$20
bang,
more.
bang, bang.
I knew it.
Meeting to order. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carrie, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Pizzle.
Here.
Counselor Smallwood.
Here.
Counselor Hamblin.
Present?
Counselor Lee.
Here.
Counselor Exner.
Here.
Counselor Schultz. Here. Mayor Pulliam.
Here. I'll start off with a welcome to everybody. Thank you for coming tonight. It's a very exciting council meeting for us. We start off every meeting with a quick review of this evening's agenda. Tonight, we just did the pledge and the roll. We will then look for any changes to the agenda. We usually do public comment, but as you'll see in changes to the agenda, what we're probably looking to do is to move public comment until immediately after the survey results are announced. That way, instead of back and forth, it allows the members of our audience to provide any comments that they might like to provide council given the new information on the survey results that we'll receive this evening. After that, we will get into our consent agenda, old business, new business, which is our Parks and Recs community survey results, and then we'll go to reports from the city manager and committee and council reports from all of us. With that, is there any changes to tonight's agenda?
Aside from the
Just changing it to the public comment, we're all good with that?
Yep.
Okay. So with that, the consent agenda.
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilor Peetzold and a second by Councilor Hamlin that we adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to new business, Parks and Rec community survey results. So yeah, please come forward. I just want to start with a couple of things on this. As many in the audience know, the council or the city purchased about roughly 40 acres of land that just sits just adjacent off of Pleasant Street where the old Cedar Ridge Middle School used to sit. That along with the neighboring aquatic center and then all the acreage behind those buildings, roughly about 40 acres in total. Some of you may remember the football field back there, the track, there's some wooded areas. The Sandy River comes into play in that area. In addition to the aquatic centers, most of you know, probably all of you know, is that we had to make a really hard decision to temporarily close the aquatic center early part of last year. Since that time, we've been working really hard proactively to try to put together a plan both for our park system, that property, as well as the aquatic center. Many members of this council met with the folks over at the Redmond Parks and Rec District to talk to them about their Parks and Rec District, their aquatic facilities, and their parks. Councilor Exner and I went over to Madras and toured their facilities. Councilor Peetzold as well. I know that Councilors Schultz and Lee have met with several people who've put together Parks and Rec Districts and had success doing that, and talked about different options with different aquatic centers that are successful. I think, was it the Madras one in particular was one that you met on recently. So part of it is kind of this next stage for us was to figure out what does our constituents want? What do the people of Sandy and the surrounding communities want with a pool? In addition to the pool, with the 40 acres of the community campus as well as our parks around Sandy. So to get some feedback from our community, we recently brought in a firm that will be presenting, I forget the name of the firm, I apologize. CDRI.
John Campbell and Martha.
All right. And we put together a committee. I served on that committee along with Councilors Smallwood and Schultz, Jordan Wheeler, and then Tanya, who runs our Parks and Rec department, also served on that committee. We worked up some survey questions to hopefully give us some direction as we make decisions. And so as we gather here tonight, we'll have a presentation from that firm. One presentation, I don't know how they're going to do their presentation, but we basically have two different results. One is more of a scientific survey where it was a complete random sample out to different community members and asked them for their feedback and engagement. In addition to that, we also went out to the community as a whole and provided an online survey for members of the community to be able to fill out. We'll also be getting those results here tonight as well. We don't intermingle the results because one's scientific in nature while the other is you open it up to a broad public and ask for feedback. So those two survey results will be different, but we'll be hearing what both results are tonight. So with that, I'll call you on over and let's hear these results. Thank you for joining us and all the work you've put into this.
Whoops, I did that. There we go. Very welcome. Guess we'll come out here, does that make sense? And kind of share a podium, I guess. I'm John Campbell,
And I'm Martha DeLong.
and we'll be presenting this this information. I will sort of do in this presentation the play-by-play, and Martha will provide color commentary, I guess, as we go through this. I've done more of the detail on this one, but you'll hear from both of us. But our mission this evening is to walk you through the results of the Parks and Recreation Community Survey and give you some information about that, and good introduction on what that is. So I think we can jump right in. What we'll be talking about this evening is we'll spend a little bit of time telling you about the methods, so what was the process for it, and then we'll go through the research results, briefly look at the demographics, at the issues of how they rate the potential aquatic center features that we looked at, other property suggestions, look at some of the verbatim comments that people provided, as well as some general opinions about property use, and then look at support for placing the district concept before voters and to talk about that. We'll give you some conclusions and recommendations. This presentation outline is also the table of contents for the report, because the report is essentially the slides plus the materials sent out and the verbatim comments. So in the appendix in the report are the survey questionnaire materials and the verbatim comments as well, which we have provided to Jordan. So that's what we'll be looking at as we go through.
Okay.
Look, go ahead.
Okay.
The colors began.
Yeah. We developed the survey with that subcommittee of the city council, along with the city manager and the parks director. And it is essentially a mail-out survey, but we also had an online option. So anybody who was in that random sample had an online option to do, and we kept those people separate from that other non-scientific sample. So we mailed 5,278 citizens of Sandy, the Oregon Trail School District, and Estacada in the end also joined us. So we had 2,000 from Sandy essentially, and 2,000 from the Oregon Trail School District, but outside the city of Sandy, and about 1,000 from Estacada. We used a process that we've used a number of times before. First, we sent out an announcement simply saying, you're going to be getting this survey. And we also provided the online option at that point, so they could have gone online and just finished it there. Then we sent out a mailer about a week later that included a letter from Jordan Wheeler explaining what we were doing and the survey. Then we followed that up about 2 weeks later to anybody who had not responded, either online or by mailing it back to us, and asked them again to please complete the survey. And everybody, we also reminded about the online option each time. We got back 1,216 surveys, and we continue to receive
Very
them.
enthusiastic.
You have a very enthusiastic. It does vary a little by those three groups I was talking about, but the response rate really was excellent, some of the best that we've ever received. So that was really impressive, and we do keep getting a few every day.
I will mention that when we put this together, people always say you're going to mail us out and everybody's going to do it online. We give them a QR code. That's the thing you can read with your smartphone and just go straight online. We give them that in every communication. We give them the URL. We give them all of that. And still we had 12% filled it out online in the random sample and 88% mailed it back. Our theory is, but this is something we discovered a few years ago, that mail outs actually seem to work in this day and age, is that people respond to it pretty well. So that's how we work with it. But this
and
was.
it was postage paid, so nobody had to put a stamp on it. They could just stick it in the mailbox.
But it was, the list came from registered voters in these different various areas. And to give you just a very brief breakdown, you see the number originally sent out. Boy, that's hard to read from the statistic with that. But essentially, we had a total of 1,200 total return. That was 608 from Sandy, 485 from the the Greater Oregon Trail School District, which is Oregon Trail School District less Sandy, and 123 from Estacada. In the numbers that we're about to show you, we have weighted the data by 2 dimensions. We have weighted it because while it gives us the ability to look at Sandy and these different groups independently, when we aggregate it into a total, we want to be able to look at it represented by the number of voters or population size in the different areas. Do you follow that? So by doing that, it means we downgrade the weight of Sandy in the total, we increase the weight of the Oregon Trail School District, the rest of it in the total, so that we can look at that together. But we can also look at them individually as well. We also weight by gender, and we do that because just with telephone surveys or online surveys, women simply are more willing to fill them out or to talk to us than men. And so, but what we know when people go to vote is they vote about 50-50. So we weight it so that we make sure it's about 50-50 in the weighted total. We've given you though information. We have Jordan has all the information on the weighted and unweighted data as well as the random sample as well.
Are you looking for questions throughout or at the end? What
You're
would you
welcome
prefer?
to ask
Yes.
that throughout. I'm sorry, and thank you for.
Oh, no, you're fine. Just a quick question on Estacada. 12% response rate is a little bit lower than everyone else. Should we take that as, I know we're going to get into the bulk of the actual numbers, but the fact that the response rate is less, should we take that as a less enthusiastic response from that area?
I think that to a certain extent you can do that. I think some people were also confused because it said City of Sandy on it. We got a number of comments even of those people who did respond to say, I live in Estacada.
Yeah, right.
So they
Sure.
didn't really, they weren't so sure whether they really should be responding. So I think that that had an impact too. Any other questions?
And final point up there, the verbatim comments that we provided you are from anyone who offered the comments, and they're unweighted. And so it's important to keep in mind, verbatim comments are lots of fun to read because they've got lots of flavor and color in them and all of that. And it's easy to find the comment that
Censor out
represents
the
what you are
customers.
most passionate about or most scared of, and think everybody thinks that. But I really want to stress that only about 1/3 of the respondents gave us a verbatim comment. So when you read those, you're just reading the comments. It's significant, it's 1/3 of them, but don't look at that as representing the whole. Look at the numbers we're showing you as representing the overall opinion about these elements. But it's still very important to look what they say, and some very interesting ones as well. We'll look briefly at some of the demographics, just so you have a flavor of who these are. And again, this was sent out to voting households. So 3 in 10 have children at home. So do you currently have children under the age of 18 in your household? And as you can see, this is a format you'll see on many of these. I guess I can't use this as a pointer on television screens. So the top line is the total. The next line is the Greater Oregon Trail School District. And you can see that's about 2 in 10 having children at home, whereas Sandy is about 4 in 10, which is the next line, 38% saying they have children at home, and Estacada about 1/3. So you see some variance there, and these variances we actually think are more significant than where people live on some of these elements that we'll be looking at. Most live in owner-occupied homes. This is very common when we do voter surveys. Your actual owner versus renter populations are going to be different from this if you look at the census numbers, but when you look at voting, you get a overwhelming bias towards owner occupancy with that. Just over half have a college degree on average. You see a little less. The blue colors are college degree or higher. Green are some college or lower. A little less likely to have a college degree in Estacada, maybe roughly a little bit more in a Greater Oregon Trail School District. But overall, these numbers are fairly similar. Looking at average age, it always surprises people with voter surveys that they're older. I was actually surprised this average age is younger than some of the things some of the surveys we do. The average age is 57. There are definitely differences by area. Average age in Sandy was 51, the Greater Oregon Trail School District 60, and Estacada 55. This is also that difference in age is something we think is relevant as we look at these numbers as well.
It's very much in keeping with whether or not they had children at home.
Yeah. And I believe it's our last, there's a couple more demographics on that. But the average length of time that they've lived in the local area is 25 years.
Wow.
And it's shorter in Sandy, about 18 years, and longer in the Oregon Trail School District. We particularly, frankly, this is one, a point that is worth just pausing for a little bit, in talking with particularly elected officials, because if you're an elected official, the odds are you've been here a while, right? You've lived here, you know some of the history and some of that, and it's important to remember that, for example, in Sandy, about half your voters have no lived experience of what was going on here more than 18 years ago. You follow that?
Mhm.
And I know, in my town, I can tell you all the politics from, I don't want to admit how far back forward now at this point, but, and it's hard to remember that a lot of this stuff is stuff that, while some of us who've been around for a long time can remember, it's new for people. And so remembering that many of your voters don't know or don't have some of that history as well, I think matters. And then we asked them, in the last year, how often has anyone in your household visited a local park or recreation facility, such as parks, pools, trails, playing fields, skate park, similarly publicly owned facilities. And 1 in 3 are frequent users with that, and definitely a difference by, you can see Sandy, the blue, is the more frequent use, and the Sandy respondents definitely more frequent than the Greater Oregon Trail School District or Estacada.
Although note that the question didn't say in Sandy, so it could have been a park anywhere. It didn't have to be in Sandy.
And then we asked them the first question about the actual facilities. They actually answered some of the demographics towards the end of the survey. But we said for the, I'll help split it up. There we go. For the indoor pool to continue serving the public, additional public investment would be required. Regarding the pool, do you believe the city should build an expanded aquatic center with features such as indoor and outdoor pools and a splash pool for young children? Repair and renovate the existing indoor pool only? Remove the pool and convert the area to a less expensive use, or not sure, other suggestions? And when we asked that question, the answer came out that 3/4 support keeping the aquatic center and very few support removal. So on the charts that you're seeing here, the sort of reddish brick color is people saying remove or convert. You can see that's a fairly small number, about 10%. It is 10% overall. The dark blue is 39% who are saying expand the aquatic center. The lighter blue is renovate the existing, and then the gray is unsure or other. And what was interesting to us is that overall, while you do see some differences, you see a little more support for expanding in Sandy or Estacada versus the Greater Oregon Trail School District. And we can look at these and start to say, oh, they're really different. Frankly, when we look at this, mainly these are the same kind of numbers. These are, these ratios are, they're a little bit different, but it isn't like Greater Oregon Trail School District is dramatically get rid of it, we don't care, and the others, mostly these have the similar profile. So as you're looking at these differences, don't fall into the error of saying, hey, reading too much into relatively small differences, which is why our next slide is essentially the exact same data to point out the major finding. This is simply your total line. Is that the differences by area are less significant than similarities. So the major takeaway is about 40% saying expand the aquatic center, about 35% saying renovate the existing one only, and 10% saying remove and convert it is the overall finding. Yes?
So 40% basically, 35% expand or renovate only. What should I take away from that? Is it definitely we're going to be expected to, the responders said to renovate, or is it almost a 50-50 split, 39 versus 35? How would I analyze that, those two numbers?
We'll take a couple of things away from this, and first thing to do is be relieved that there are more questions coming that will help you analyze it. Is probably the most important thing. But I would say the second thing is to look at it overall and say, hey, there's 2 blue wedges there about support for the aquatic center. And look at that and say, okay, it looks like there's significant support for keeping the aquatic center, so that's your baseline finding. And then the question of, and to sort of preview a little bit coming up, but looking at everything that we're looking at, our conclusion is, you might say conservatively expand the aquatic center. So mainly renovate it, but do some things that brings it up to date, makes it more accessible to the outside. But people aren't looking for turn this into a major,
water park
destination thing. Is more than what you're.
Rainbow Flash. Let's just say it.
So those of you who are hoping for a water park, not looking. The data doesn't support it. So I would overall, does that help?
Yeah.
did look at some subsets of this data overall. Support for the expansion, which is 39% overall, is higher for those who are under 45 or frequent park and rec users and households with children. Not too surprising there. And essentially it's younger adults, especially those with children in the household, support expanding the aquatic center more. However, it's important to keep in mind that most voters aren't in those categories. Most voters are older. And it's just that it's a painful reality that we constantly see is a census profile of the adults in your community is going to skew much younger than a voter profile in your community from that standpoint. Women are definitely more supportive than men, and this is something we see in almost every survey when we're looking at. You support this, you support fire or police or whoever it is. Women generally a bit more supportive than men, but in this case 44% to 37%. And between expansion and renovation only, Sandy and Estacada respondents lean a little bit towards expansion. Greater Oregon Trail School District respondents flip out evenly on that. But overall, I think you've got the sort of sense of that finding. Mark, anything else on that?
Any questions before we go on?
Okay. And then to go to the to sort of give you somewhat more of that information. The next question we asked is, if the pool area is improved, how important is it to include the following features? Is it vary somewhat or not important? So people could look at each feature, look at indoor pool for year-round use, outdoor pool for summertime use, water slide and other recreational features, splash pads and fountains for younger children, and warm water pool. When we ask that question, you get a very clear answer. Is that 73% rate the indoor pool for year-round use as very important. And that, the dark blue, mainly when we ask a very, somewhat, and not, we get excited about the varies for the nots. And the somewhat, we consider, okay, it's sort of a middle ground, we don't draw too much conclusion from that. So when we see the dark blue, 73% saying indoor pool for year-round use, that's a strong endorsement of the need for that. Some support for splash pads and fountains for younger children and warm water pool, less so for outdoor pool, and water slide and some of those elements. But we see that as, if nothing else, indoor pool for year-round use is something that people are definitely endorsing. From this, we keep envisioning, I guess, in part we're working with another city that's looking at some of these issues, and they keep talking about roll-up doors or something so that you have an indoor pool, but you can sort of have it a little more accessible to outside, and maybe a small splash pad right outside, so it doesn't look like you do too much or something. But that's what the answer came back from that standpoint.
I think it's also important to note that even the water slides that only had about 2 in 10 said that was very important. Only a third said that don't do that. You know,
Right.
that's not important at all. So again, part of what it is that they want in expansion, they want to see what you're talking about, and what you're going to really do there.
On the outdoor pool, you know, when we framed this question, I think, I could be wrong, but I think we were thinking, when we were posing it, we were posing it two ways on the outdoor pool. One is, is this a viable option as something as an alternative to an indoor, obviously. But the other is, under the expansion of the pool, maybe part of the expansion or renovation is an outdoor pool. What should we take from this? I guess my question is, how, in your professional opinion, when people sat down to fill out the survey, how many does your gut tell you thought that the outdoor pool was an alternative to having an indoor pool? Meaning, I'm not going to show support for any kind of outdoor pool because I'm worried that if I do, I'm not going to get an indoor pool. Does that make sense? Did it skew it, you think, or am I trying to read too far into it?
I think if you look at the response for the indoor pool for the year-round use, I think it
Yeah,
kind
so
of gives you an answer to that.
So
Yeah.
Well, I think the
Yeah.
question is, how important is it to include the following features?
Yeah.
So it's an additive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So-
Yeah.
My assumption is that most of the people said, okay, we gotta have the year-round pool indoors. What else do I wanna include? And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
you know, the outdoor pool, somewhat surprising, because a lot of communities have outdoor pools. But we've seen it, and I'm thinking of another community where we did a somewhat similar thing. We were somewhat surprised that it's the indoor pool that people really want that year-round ability to go and exercise and get their kids out to.
Yeah, we live in Oregon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we know it, it's cold
It
and
is
rainy.
possible we might get a little different answers if we were asking in July.
Yeah. Or Southern California.
Yeah.
Maybe not
That's
this
an
last
interesting
one.
thought. We made the survey this last month. What was the dates for, again, for the written survey? When it-
Essentially November and through much of December.
So it would be about the same time for the, if we're thinking about November as a voting time?
Oh, sure,
Mhm.
yeah.
So we're talking about very similar kinds of thought
Yeah.
processes, which I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, if I'm in the middle of the summer, I may not be thinking about it. Or maybe I would be thinking about it more than if I
Yeah.
was in
Yeah.
the middle of the winter.
No, it's a
Yeah.
good point.
Or differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, good thought, okay.
We also just look at some of the variability, for those of you in the community watching, it's a little hard to read some of those, but the dark blue is the total, the lighter blue is the Greater Oregon Trail School District, the next bar is Sandy, and then the lighter green is Estacada. But essentially, they're Oregon Trail School District respondents, they tend to be a little less than the total on most of these, while the others tend to be a little bit more, so maybe a little less support. But overall, notice mainly that the shape of those, but what we're showing you is the very important rating for these. But mainly, the shape of responses is pretty similar for all of them overall. Certainly splash pads and fountains for younger children, particular enthusiasm out of Estacada, for example, with that. But overall, very similar profile. And looking at any variability with that, the greatest variability on very important ratings for the indoor year-round pool is women are much more supportive than men, 82% very important rating compared to men for 65. And just when we do surveys, on average, men are somewhat more grumpy than women. That's just how they are. But no, that's
My
still
wife told me that,
65% are
yes.
supportive. So that's 2/3 supportive.
Not
So
always.
not all men. But
Yeah, just say not all.
I'm working on it, I'm working on it, okay.
Yeah. Also, younger, under 65 versus 65 plus, and households with children versus those without. And on other amenities, generally aligning with expectations, households with children are more supportive of child-oriented amenities, that type of thing.
But I think it's important still to look at with the indoor pool, even those without children, 70% say that's very important, and 65% of those grumpy guys say it's very important.
That's still
So that's
a
still
landslide
is.
majority of grumpy guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you're saying we have a landslide majority of grumpy guys in Sandy?
So there you go. Landslide majority of grumpy guys.
But those are strong numbers for the indoor pool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or a lot of lives that are saying, you were gonna take this survey.
That's right.
We need this pool.
So that's a good question. Did you allow for multiple people in the same household
No.
to take the survey?
So
So a guy and a gal.
mostly the answer is no. There's a little bit of yes and no, and here's how that works, is that there is certainly one per address. And per address, there's only one in the scientific sample. And so there was
yeah.
one household that was very cute. They actually color copied the whole thing and sent it in, but we can look at the codes.
But
and
one
know it
was
came
a
from the same
man and
place.
one was a woman, so.
So one we put into the general community survey and the other we kept. So there were people who certainly attempted that. But there was,
I wanna
those who
know.
filled
That's
it
great.
out, I think we have one in.
Right there.
But
That
there
is
were definitely
wonderful.
those, but
Identify.
we didn't throw
Anybody
out-
in here know anything about that?
We didn't throw out any of the responses. We put those that were in the non-scientific sample, because the point of the scientific sample is you can look at that and it's more projectable to the whole population. But it's still valid to hear from anyone who feels it's important to fill it out, so.
It's- Each of the surveys had a code, so we could tell whether there are two people responding with that code.
Right.
And so that's how we knew. And that's why we have to weight by male, female, because the women were more likely to return it than the men.
And then in the next question, we said the following are suggestions for other improvements at the 40-acre property to serve residents of Sandy and surrounding communities. Which suggestions are important to include in final plans? Again, very somewhat or not important. And we listed community meeting spaces, dog park, indoor gym and athletic facilities, indoor performance center, mountain bike trails, outdoor sports fields, outdoor amphitheater, paths, trails providing access to the river, playground, skate park, and tennis courts, pickleball courts. And when we listed those, a very clear winner came out of that.
Pickleball courts.
Pickleball courts. Yeah, any votes?
Come on.
I'm gonna say the outdoor amp.
Yeah, but
Paths.
They're kinda down there.
plainly, paths, trails providing access to the river, 52%, saying that was
Yeah,
very
it is.
important.
Yeah.
Followed by playgrounds at 42%, community meeting spaces and outdoor sports fields at both around 30%. Dog parks is something that we've seen in many Parks and Rec surveys. If you look at the data just by those who own dogs, that gets a really high rating. Those who don't own dogs don't, so you sort of see it generally in the middle of the pack as a result of this, or reference there, but there you go. And then indoor gym and athletic facilities, lower, and then some of the others.
Where do you see that in relation to others, similar surveys you do in other communities as far as the need for, because I'm a little surprised at the indoor gym and athletic facilities being lower on that list. Well, it's not lower, but it's, as low as it is. I was expecting that originally to be towards the top.
River access, however it is phrased, is
Mhm.
almost always something that communities want more of. Whether it's a lake, a river, a pond, they wanna be
Water
able
access.
to get to the water.
Yeah.
And so it didn't surprise me at all that the paths down to the river, were, most, and, the playgrounds, kids, parks are for kids, in a lot of ways. So it isn't a real surprising order as far
Okay.
as I'm
Yeah,
concerned.
and indoor gym and some of that, smaller constituency than
Mhm.
the large one. I would definitely echo what Martha said, is
Mhm.
so many of our communities have been built without recognizing the value of access to the local water in some way. And when that gets provided again, and people get a chance to walk by it or see it, they get very excited. And so it wasn't a surprise to see it.
Oh, in my analysis, what would it be, where would the line be drawn that says, from here up, we're pretty much in strong favor of, and from here down, we should probably not try to emphasize those facilities on the 40 acres? Would you draw it with a?
Part of that depends on how much money you have.
Yeah. It looks like
Quite
there's a couple
honestly.
natural breaks. There's a natural break after the paths and trails, and then the next three, and then there's another natural break
Yeah.
for dog park.
Yeah, no, I think
Yeah.
that's a fair analysis, and I think that part of what you'll be mixing into this, in our view, is that it's clear that, the respondents are both saying, look, we want an aquatic center. We want we like access to the river, the sports fields, things that, looks like you could use it for that, and we'll see, we've got a couple more questions coming up where you'll see some of that. They are saying that, but there's definitely an overlay of, there's every survey we do, voters express some distrust of government. And I would say that certainly in Sandy, you have, like, are you gonna use the money wisely, don't build a Taj Mahal, how much is this gonna affect our taxes and some of that. So there is a pretty strong overlay. We want you to do something, but we wanna know that it's really carefully thought through and you're not spending more than you need to in some of that. And so when you're looking at something and saying, boy, like the community meeting spaces, which rank pretty well, but then we say, okay, indoor gym and athletic facilities, we look at that. If it's kicking up the cents per thousand, a fairly small amount, might be worth looking at. If it's kicking it up larger,
Right.
Then, but I think some of those are trade-offs that you're looking at
Right,
and
right.
saying, look, we need to be able to present this where frankly, everyone who's making these decisions can stand up very confidently and say, we really looked at this very closely. And we're confident that we can do this at this price and doesn't go over. So I think there's using that kind of thinking as you're looking at this list, I think can help. You'll get numbers that will come. Yeah.
I think also too, if you look at the very and the somewhat, if you just look at the blue, everything from outdoor sports fields down is really pretty close.
Yeah.
If you just take the blue areas, so.
Yeah.
Should go on for
And I
that?
think we've got an opportunity too in some of these, maybe even looking at multi-purpose.
Absolutely.
So like if you have an indoor gym, you can turn that into a community meeting space.
That's right.
by putting
Right.
some tables and chairs
Yeah.
around it.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's pretty
Yep.
easy to accomplish both.
Mhm.
Probably don't wanna do that like on your bottom of the list thing and prioritize there,
Yeah.
so.
But
We're not gonna
that's-
do tennis courts and indoor performance facility
Sure.
as a two
Dog
for one.
park with the pickleball.
The dog chase the tennis ball.
But that's an example of using the space wisely.
Sure.
And people responding to that and say, okay, that fits Sandy, we don't need it to be,
Well, you don't have to do everything
Right.
with the first,
Right.
with your first proposal as far as, your first money request. There are things that you can, having proven that you did a great job of not going overboard with providing excellent facilities, then you can say, okay, now what are we at?
I think what's interesting about this slide is the first one with the most votes, so to speak, is probably one of the cheapest things to do.
Give me a weed
Yeah.
whacker and we got a path.
Staff can do that.
yeah, and.
Would you say staff can do it out there, making trails? Jordan, get ready.
City Councilor
Get the
Machete Guy
bulldozer.
in the woods.
Yeah. But it is, we do see consistently people, if you think about it, there's so many waterways which, when 100 years ago, people saw everything as that's industrial, that's a place to move stuff, or if you can't move freight on it, it's not that useful and some of that. And as we start to reclaim those and realize that these are places people can walk by and recreate and some of that, it really is inspiration.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Next slide, I'm not sure we need to dwell on this one too much. A little bit of geographic difference in the very important ratings on the top two, but not a lot. Sandy, very important rating, is more than 5 points above the Greater Oregon Trail School District on playgrounds, indoor gym and athletic facilities, mountain bike trails, and outdoor amphitheater, but those are all, some of those latter ones are fairly small, very important ratings already. Greater Oregon Trail School District is 5 points above the others on community meeting spaces, which I thought was interesting. So potentially that tells us something. And Estacada are more supportive of the dog park, and we're not sure why, but
We have one they don't.
so you have one, they don't.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, they don't have one.
And the written responses are certainly valuable to look at. Many of the responses underscore some of the results already tabulated. People talking about the importance of a pool, or how the kids need to learn to swim and that type of thing. But others, definitely some of the ones that stood out as additional comments, space activities for children and teens, especially after school. More walking trails, and a number of people said walking trails that aren't necessarily to the river, but more walking trails generally. That's another thing we're seeing generally in a lot of our surveys, is people discovering that we've all, those of us who are older sort of know the idea that we all grew up in a car culture. Without a car, you can't do anything, kind of thing. People are starting to discover it's kind of nice to be able to walk to the store and walk to some of the things. Some people actually said, it used to be in Sandy, you could walk to these different things, and we need to get back to some of that as well. So more walking trails, basketball, community rec center, rentable indoor and covered outdoor areas for private parties, earned multiple mentions. And then there were a variety of things, archery or bowling mentioned by a few, but we would not recommend adding those to the list based on the frequency of response. There were various comments related to cost. Some were rooted in general concern about keeping it reasonable, efficient, carefully managed, wanting to be reassured this was thought through, and people talking about we do see one of the ways to lose voter confidence the quickest is to, some people say, well, you bought it, didn't you have a plan for it? Some of those kinds of things. And or I think even someone mentioned I never know how to say whether it's Wapato or
Oh,
how you say the
yeah,
it's like,
Wapato.
it was built but not staffed. There are examples around the state where things get built but then not open, and some of that. So those kinds of things can be, you get blamed for those things even though they're not in your jurisdiction. It's just government makes these mistakes, kind of thing. And then there were certainly a number who was there. In fact, there was one who didn't even fill out the survey, other than wrote, "Our family votes no taxes," across it in red ink in case we might miss it. So, so there are some who are just plain no taxes, don't do any of it. We don't, make do with what you have, and some of that. So there's certainly those comments as well. But if you read them overall, you'll see everything from sort of well-reasoned discussions of some people aware of what compression is, and are you thinking through this, and some of those elements to people who are, we edited some of them because they were a little difficult to sort out exactly what was being said. But we didn't, and I must say, we did very light editing on it. Mostly you get what you get whatever they said, but if we were, I'll just say, curious. And there were a couple who simply, there was one who just wanted to tell us all about what the person's profession was, and had nothing to do with comment from there. And there were a few who questioned demographically why we asked some of the questions, but I think we've explained some of that. But they are entertaining. You can certainly read through them and certainly learn a lot as well from that. And then we asked, moving forward, which of the following do you believe is the best approach? Should we use the entire property for public use, including recreation facilities and parkland? Use the majority of the property for public parks and recreation while converting some to mixed-use private development compatible with the public use? Or sell the majority of the property for private mixed-use development, or not sure? And when we asked that question, the answer came out very strongly to support for using the entire property for public recreation and parkland. 56% saying that, another 27% saying use the majority for parks and recreation, convert some to mixed-use private development compatible with public use. But overall, very strong endorsement for use the entire property. People saying in the verbatim comments, we don't have enough public lands, and it's, they might be more of it around here than some of that. There was discussion when we were putting this together about what about some mixed-use private developments that's compatible with the park use. In people's comments, we don't close that door entirely so long as most of it isn't for that, or even, that it's fairly small percentages for that.
Sure.
And people are skeptical that private use is going to be anything other than ugly. So they really would want to know that, I know there was a discussion about what an attractive brew pub nearby. Well, attractive brew pub is very different than instant oil change place right next to the bar or something else. And so, there's
We get another
skepticism.
gas station.
Yeah, the gas station.
I think it's interesting too that sell the property is 9%, and remember way back at the beginning, 10% of the people wanted you to,
Just
get
level
rid
it.
of it, level it, get rid of the pool. So you've got that core group of 10% who are pretty committed, but that's what we always see when we go out and talk to voters, is there's anywhere really from 25, 30%, 10% is not bad, of people who are just like out of the box, I'm not even gonna consider it. So 10% is not bad.
And looking at some variability by geographic area, support for using the entire property for public use, by 61% of Sandy respondents, 54% of those in the Greater Oregon Trail School District, and 54% in Estacada. So note that while those are differences, they aren't that big a difference. It's still the majority in each of those places supporting for that. The bigger differences are by age. Those are 65 plus, so show lower support for the entire property use, 52% compared to 60 for younger adults. And yeah, younger adults means under 65. So when you're talking about voters, that's kind of where you are. Other groups showing more support would be expected, those having children home, making greater use of the facilities and some of that. So that tells us a little bit about those differences. And then we asked a question about the actual district concept. And I'm going to read it because I think it's important to understand what's there, but try to read it quickly, so we'll get through that. But we said added taxpayer support would be needed to pay for development and operation of the 40-acre property for public use and to support other area park and recreation facilities. One option is to ask voters to approve a special district that would have its own board of directors and a district-wide property tax rate to support it. The district would have boundaries that include Sandy and the greater Mount Hood community, including communities from Estacada and Boring to Government Camp, offering improved parks and recreation facilities district-wide while charging residents lower in-district rates for all fee-based activities such as the pool or indoor gym facilities. So given that, more work is necessary before a specific proposal, including a specific tax rate, can be presented to voters for a decision. Do you support work on this concept continuing so it can be placed before voters? Yes, develop the district concept and place it on the ballot. No, do not develop the concept further, or not sure. You follow the question? So we asked that question, and the answer was 2/3 said, go ahead and develop it further and place the district before voters. So 66% said they supported it, 18% no, said no, don't develop the concept further, and 16% were unsure. And that 18% is very consistent with what Mark was talking about, is that, you know, the sort of stronger no voters for that.
Although we don't know how they would react to a very specific proposal.
Sure.
And that would be the next
Right.
step.
This- Yeah, it does not mean that they would all vote yes for it, but they said, okay, I'm listening, tell me what you got. I'm willing to risk having it go on the ballot and, for us to talk about. So, we felt that was asking people, would you support something or vote for something when there aren't dollars attached to it, and specificity is really not, you know, it's no better than a Ouija board, which are fake.
Did you do that same pie chart there with if you removed Estacada, removed the Oregon Trail, like in the 3 different ways?
Yes, and we're not showing the pie chart, but we do have those numbers on the next slide.
Oh, okay.
And again, our variability, there is variability, but again, the interesting part is they're more similar than different. So with that, putting the concept on the ballot is supported by 70% of Sandy respondents instead of that 66. 65% of those in the Greater Oregon Trail School District, and 67% of those in Estacada. And this was one of the findings that throughout this survey, we found what thought was most interesting is the degree to which one of the questions going in was, is it just people in Sandy who would like this,
Right.
or is it appropriate for a larger area? And the answer is really, in a significant way, the entire Oregon Trail School District plus Estacada speaks with really more one voice on this than different voices on it.
So in your Estacada, you had what, 112 respondents,
Yeah.
so that's a really small number when
Yeah,
you're
it
looking at
is.
it from 67. How would you analyze that? Because when it comes down to voting,
Well, the
more than
way-
112 people are gonna vote.
Yeah.
But also
and-
only 1,000 cards went out.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and when you look at the weighted data, they are also only about 10% of the voters. If you included all of the groups that we have in here, they would only be about 10%. But do we have as much confidence in those responses from Estacada as we do from Sandy, for instance?
Mhm.
No, we don't, because it is a smaller sample. But what we've found is anytime you get over 100, it pretty much evens out, and you don't see more than a couple percentage point variation.
So
Think
we're
it's-
comfortable with it, but we're not, 100 has technically a plus or minus roughly 10% versus, but when we look at this, it doesn't surprise us that they're in the range, but we're not looking and saying 67% is significantly higher than 65%.
Was Estacada the city limits of Estacada, or was that also the surrounding areas?
City limits.
City limits.
City limits.
So something interesting, the way I take this is, these survey results are remember, we have another survey that we're going to do, right? So this helps tell us, you know, all right, yes, we have deep interest. Now, now we gotta put together an actual package proposal that then we'll be putting in front of the other survey. So part of what I think this help answers for us is we should probably look at including Estacada in that next
Yeah.
survey.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that,
Yeah.
this lays the groundwork with who should be surveyed next. The other difference is, not surprising, women more than men, households with children more than those without, respondents who are younger compared to those who are older. And those differences are really the greater differences between the Greater Oregon Trail School District and Sandy than the actual geographic location where people live. And then looking at, we did have our non-random sample of people who were towards the end of the survey. Word went out that people could fill out the survey online, and so we had a number of people fill out the survey online. So they're non-random. It doesn't mean it's not valid, but it's more when you have a number of people at a community meeting, they voice their opinion. That's really useful information to know what people at a community meeting think. It's not necessarily projectable to the whole population. But we had 586 surveys, which blew us away.
Yeah,
with
that was amazing.
With the number of people who really were interested in this, and 493 their zip codes were Sandy or Boring zip codes. 83% were women who filled it out. And 2/3 have children in the home, which is the exact reverse of the random sample. and definitely younger age profile, an average of 45. Comparatively higher support for the indoor pool, warm water pool, and for the water slide and recreation facilities, but still 28%. So overall, they were saying about the same things, but generally more stronger endorsement for some of these elements. Somewhat lower, very important rating for access to the river, dog park, and amphitheater. Somewhat higher for indoor gym and athletic facilities, but otherwise very similar ratings. It was interesting that overall, not too far off what we were seeing.
And what you would
yeah.
expect, given that they're younger, they're more likely to have kids.
Yeah.
And they're more likely to be women.
Greater support among both men and women for placing it, the question on the ballot, so more enthusiastic for that stuff. So, yeah.
I'm trying to read into what this going on here, and I'm trying not to be too biased, but I wonder if the large number of people who submitted the online survey were people who had a lot of dog in the fight kind of thing, and really
that's a good
wanted to make sure that,
possibility.
and I see younger people in here too, and women, if there was certainly a bias of these folks,
Yeah.
and
Which is-
what
which
kind
is
of
Why you don't wanna rely just on an online survey is because you will get a more biased sample, and that's why we wanted to have the core of the project be a scientific sample that wouldn't have the biases that you have here.
I had a couple people call me up and say they were actually mad they didn't get a written, mailed-in survey.
Yeah.
And they wanted to know when that survey was gonna be online so they could get in there, so.
Yeah.
But
there's
my
committed people.
takeaway from that, because yes, I had the same thing. I had a lot of people who were upset that they didn't get a card survey, but I think that shows the enthusiasm.
I was just, that's what I was.
The
yeah.
enthusiasm that people had in this particular topic. So.
And I think another piece too with this isn't looking at tax-paying residents either. So somebody's in an apartment complex is not paying property taxes, which I think can skew how they might vote or respond if they know it is unlikely to have any financial impact on them. It's a lot easier to say, yeah, we want this,
Yeah.
than if they know that their property taxes may go up a few hundred or a few thousand.
It ends up in
Yeah.
their rent. They end up.
So
paying
we
for it.
investigated that a little bit in the committee,
Yep.
and one of the demographic infos we got was, I can't remember it now, but how small of a percentage renters currently are in Sandy, to
Yeah.
where it was such a small
Among-
groupage.
Among voters.
Voters.
Among
Yeah,
voters.
voters.
I apologize, good
Yeah.
point, yeah.
In this part of the country, generally, as people get older, they're more likely to own their home, and voters tend to be older.
Yeah.
And so you have maybe 10% in the survey, 10 or 15% are renters. And so, yeah, generally, we see that renters are more likely to be supportive of a tax measure, and part of it may well be that they aren't necessarily paying that check directly. And the other issue is they tend to skew towards younger, and generally, younger adults are more supportive than older adults, and because we get older, we've seen enough taxing.
Yeah.
And I kind of joke that.
You get out the red pen and write on the survey.
Yeah. But I mean,
Is that you?
I'm old enough to remember when a nice dress shirt cost $12, and I'm still outraged when I see they cost more than that. They cost a lot more than that, but there's a part that, our brains don't catch up kind of thing, so.
Was there anything in place in the survey to ensure there wasn't duplication of responses? So like if they got sent the mailer and they got online and did this secondary survey, could they do both?
What we do have is our scientific survey. They had to have a unique code that we provided. This survey, it is perfect. We're dwelling on this probably more than we should, because there's a reason you do the scientific random sample. Because if you just say everybody fill it out, this is why people always say, well, can't you just do an internet survey to find out what voters think? And we say, okay, tell us how we're gonna get a random sample of people to do this, and not just, theoretically, you could have had, we certainly look at things like their IP address.
Yeah,
and
we look to make
there's
sure
some
that we
things so
didn't see multiple IP addresses.
So we don't have
And I
Russian
think we
bots
threw a
filling
few
it out or
people
something.
out.
But there's a little bit of that, but I mean theoretically, if somebody really wanted to be clever and run around and use different computers and fill it out over and over again with this sample.
But people always worry about that, and we really don't find that happening a lot with community surveys. People are pretty legit. I mean, these are people who are really concerned, they want their voices heard, and so they fill the darn thing out.
If you make it long enough, they don't wanna fill it out twice.
Well, we made a choice.
But I are coming from with this. Mainly we look at, we're just talking about the scientific sample. And we looked at these results because you let people answer it, and we wanted to see how it compares. But if we're making a choice of which one we want to be looking at as representative of our voters, you look at the scientific sample. But it was interesting, another thing you might look at this and go, oh, did a bunch of cranky people fill this out and we all want to get their no vote in and that kind of thing? No, it looked like generally those who were really antsy to fill it out tended to skew towards people who were more supportive than not. Which, I don't know what you want to conclude from that, but that's interesting to see. So, you can hear us stepping away from the random. It's not a good scientific random sample. We're not, as researchers, we're not as excited. So, just to look at some, we are rounding the corner towards our wrap up here, but conclusions and recommendations. First, overall finding, opinions, as we said, are largely similar across the 3 areas sampled. So overall, our respondents from outside of Sandy and the Greater Oregon Trail School District and Estacada share the same views as those within the city regarding the key questions asked. And this is a significant finding because we really didn't know. We had a lot of discussions about, is it going to be very different or not? And what variability there is really can be more easily explained by the demographic differences. That compared to Sandy and Estacada respondents, those living in the Oregon Trail School District tend to be somewhat older, somewhat less likely to have children, and are less likely to have frequented parks and recreation facilities. So we thought it was interesting that overall, it seemed like this is a community that speaks with one voice. And Martha and I have joked that we're from Portland, so we apologize for that. But I think of Estacada, because I come from Portland, I think of Estacada as a million miles from Sandy, because I go completely different directions to get to the 2 places. And so when you guys said, let's include Sandy, I was like, are you sure? Like, yep. Peter says you're sure.
Yeah.
So, in our view, the overall recommendation is it makes sense to develop a district proposal. As we've said, a conservatively expanded aquatic center. So something that is primarily, we are refurbishing and upgrading what we have so that it's good for many years to come. And then looking at within that context, what are some additional things that we can add that make it a little bit more, maybe a little more friendly for summertime use, not adding a whole pool outside, but maybe having some more accessibility there to the outdoors and some of that. But looking at how do we do this so that what we're communicating to our community is that we are keeping faith with a desire not to build a Taj Mahal or something, but we are trying to make sure that we have an aquatic center with an indoor pool that will last for many years in the future. But it's got some refreshing, some expanding aspects to it, but we keep it fairly conservative. Feels like the tone we're hearing from folks. And that's our recommendation. Your direction is obviously you make these decisions, not us, but that's our recommendation. We definitely see attractive trails, including pathways that enhance access to the river, our cornerstones, playgrounds, and other outdoor park field amenities. If it's possible with a community or rec center, someplace that people can rent for events and be able to use that, if that's possible to do without it getting out of hand, and we don't know what those facilities are and what you're working with there, but if it's possible to have something in with an argument that this is a fairly reasonable conservative thing that can be provided, we would certainly endorse that. And certainly it is a district proposal, and so talking about what's possible in other areas of the district or support for that makes sense. And as far as, there may be questions where people say, well, can we add this as well? It'd be great, people will want it eventually. Remember that when you create a district, you're creating a new entity, and a new future board can look at some of those questions. But we think not putting everything in it right away makes sense. And we also think that you'll get somewhat better support in the 2020 elections when more younger adults, meaning under 65, will likely come out to vote, because in a presidential election year, you do get more younger adults coming out. Makes sense as well. And we certainly, I think, we want a clicker, we've got one more, but we also say consider the complete picture of those who responded, that remember that the voluntary non-random responses are somewhat more supportive of placing the question before voters, and that women were more likely to respond to either survey are more supportive of many questions. So regardless of whether responses from the voluntary participants are different, it's important to acknowledge the voices of everyone who took the time to offer an opinion, because separate from scientific random sample, Martha and I also have a lot of experience with community organizing issues. And we always think it's valuable to acknowledge, reward people who get involved, who come out, because participation matters. So we think it's valuable to listen to that. But keep in mind that don't assume that what you're hearing is necessarily indicative of what the greater voter population says. But we think it's valuable to acknowledge it and to make sure that that's well heard. So those are our overall conclusions with that. And any other questions, comments? I think we kept.
We're good on questions.
We hit our time point,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'd like to have the public.
Well, I'm good on questions, and then I was gonna pose, do you wanna have a short discussion, then open up to public comment, or do you wanna do public comment and then open up for a short discussion, or
Rather hear public first. Yeah.
public and then open up for a discussion? Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
guys.
appreciate it. It's been a
Thank
pleasure
you.
working with you.
Yeah.
Very much so. Thank you. All right, so at this time, we'll open up for public comment, and then we'll come back and have a discussion as well as a council. So this is opportunities, if you'd like to talk about the survey results, wonderful. If you have other items that you would also like to talk or bring up in front of council, this is also the time to do that as well. You'll have 5 minutes at the podium if you would like. When you approach the podium, please remember to state your name and your address for the record. With that, podium is open for any public comment. No public comment. Okay, yeah. Kathleen, I was gonna say, come on. Yeah.
Kathleen Walker, 15920 Southeast Bluff Road, and I took the survey. I was one of the people that got the survey. I'm also here, I'm on the Parks Board, Parks and Trails Board, and so some of my comments are gonna kind of cross over, but thank you so much for all the hard work you did. Thanks to you all for asking for that. That was great information to really compile. I think it really gave us some great information to move forward with. One of the things that I did kind of wanted to kind of clarify for some people, because it was confusing to me, is that we keep talking about it like it's 40 acres. And in fact, it's not 40 acres. It's really, there's 30 acres of wet, large cedar on steep ground down going towards the Sandy River, and there's really only 10 acres up on the flats that's really kind of developable for park, for the things that are on that list. Of that 10 acres, and some of that's, even the 10 acres got a big drop off there going to the ball fields and stuff, but still, it's got some huge potential. When the city has started this Parks Master Plan, and we have a technical advisory committee that involves the school district and a lot of other people, and I think including some people like in the school district, you know, in a larger area. They are in the process of kind of putting together survey schedules and all that. And so what I heard was you all are talking about doing another survey. The things that they're going to be asking are some of the same questions. So I guess what's kind of confusing to me is that the first plan that we did for the pool and all that didn't go well. I think we can all collectively say that that didn't go as well as we'd like it to go, because there was kind of maybe not as many people involved. And I'm hopeful that we kind of look at this and kind of figure out, we've got two trains kind of going along on separate tracks, and how do we somehow coordinate or combine these into one effort? Because when we've got different surveys going out to the same people, and we have a need in the future, when we have this Parks and Trails Master Plan finally done and we're going after grants or things like that, or we're looking at how to fund it, we're looking at a parks district. So how do we marry, you know, the things that come out of our master plan with the things that came out of this? And I think they're all under the same tent. And so how do we kind of combine that? And I don't have the answer. I'm just saying that, you know, we better figure out an answer, because it's confusing to me and to everybody else involved when we send these surveys. I understand there's a time thing, and I understand that 2020, you know, getting all that, you know, but I also kind of feel like there's a lot of questions that we have to answer. And when we talk about forming a district for Estacada, the thing that comes to mind for me immediately is, you know, we did that with the police department, and, you know, and now that, you know, I don't know whether that worked well or not, I can leave that up to you all, but we kind of stopped that because it didn't go as well. We, you know, combining a district up the mountain, when we kind of talk about having these districts that involve these bigger areas, what you'll see from the Happy Valley example and the North Clackamas district is that those people in those communities want their own parks and their dog park. And the reason Estacada was so high on the dog parks was they don't have one. They come over and use ours. So what's involved in having these districts is kind of taking on a commitment to provide those amenities in these other areas, not just getting them to help pay for the ones in our community. So that's kind of a big challenge, because I don't know that that's what you all want to take on. You're going to need a lot more money. So, and it won't be as successful, I think. But anyway, I guess I just want to say that I appreciate you all doing this. I think it's important going forward. There was no involvement from the Parks and Trails Committee. There hasn't been any crossover with any of, you know, you're paying over $100,000 for Parks and Trails. I think is that what it is? What's the consultant? You have a contract with Parks and Trails folks that are doing your Parks and Trails master plan. I think it would be really helpful to kind of get them, you know, involved in this, aware of this, somehow, you know, kind of cross over. So, you know, if we're going to kind of look at all these two trains on separate tracks in under one tent, everybody's got to be in the tent. So I encourage you to get the consultants involved in this. They can help you figure this out. This is the Community Service Center campus is all part of what they're looking at in the master plan, and I really hope that goes forward. So other than that, oh, and I do want to take you out on some trail building there, John. It's not just a weed whacker. You're going to go.
Give them the shovel and pick.
You're going out on the next trails. No, we've got a lot of potential for trails, and yes, those are much less expensive. So thank you very much for doing all the work that you've done. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you, Kathleen. I'll pause to see if anybody else wants to come to the podium. Okay. So with that, we'll go to discussion. Council on the survey results. I'll just start by saying I think obviously very exciting. I think this is democracy at work. We're all voted representatives of our constituents, and the big reason why we went out to the survey was to figure out what the support was and do that in a very scientific method. And we have that here tonight. And I think the task that we have, my personal takeaway from the survey is we've basically been given homework. We've been given an assignment. Our voters or constituents and outside of the community has asked us to put together a plan that involves several items, one of which is an indoor aquatic facility. And so it's on us to collectively come together and work hard with our staff and different community organizations and groups and constituents to put together a plan, our best effort towards a plan, and hope that we did our homework assignment correctly. I'm going to go to discussion, but I did want to address a couple of of Kathleen's comments. Kathleen, I have the same questions that you do. I think that a lot of our counselors do. With the decision that we had to make for a lot of variety of reasons, but mainly fiscal reasons with the pool, we felt it was very important to get some immediate feedback on that from the community. How this all works with the master planning process for our parks and the stuff that our Parks Committee is doing, like that's a big question that we've got to answer. Because if we do this, and it looks like we need to put together a proposal, there'll be a new board. We will not be, us as a city council will not be overseeing the parks program for the city of Sandy, as well as the aquatic center. And so we will no longer have a parks advisory board that will be advising council on that. We will have this board, this district board will have their own advisory board that's advising to them. So how much money, time, effort do we want to put towards a Parks and Rec master planning effort for our city? Well, while we may be going to the voters for this kind of a district, I mean, a master plan, it very may well be something that this new board needs to put together to look into doing. So I don't have the answers. It's something that we have a goal setting retreat that here at the end of this meeting we're going to come up with a date for. That's one of the topics. I know Jordan and I, when we talked about it, this is one of the topics we really want to talk about as a council is how we kind of tackle this issue and what we do to solve it. So with that, that's kind of what I wanted to say on that and discussion on the survey. Anybody on top? No?
Sure, I'll
Yeah.
start. A couple things. One is, I want to be a little careful about the impression, I think that the folks who made the response to the survey were that we were talking about the community center, not all of the parks within the city of Sandy, or even, I bet there's confusion about if Estacada wants to have dog parks as a high percentage. I wonder if they're thinking a dog park in Estacada. And are we thinking about a dog, don't know how that can go, but are we talking about a dog park in Estacada, or are we talking about a dog park in Sandy? So, let me finish. But sure, so I think there's confusion there, and I am a little worried about making some assumptions that we can meld in our Parks and Recreation master plan within this conversation we're having now about the community center. So I'm a little concerned about that. Not sure how that would actually float out. So it might be an advantage, might be disadvantage. I'm sort of thinking a disadvantage at this point, because I think that the swimming pool and the gym and the parks, things that they were saying was really important to folks, was focused on that 40 acres. So there's that. I'm interested in, and I think I know the answer, but I'm not sure. That maybe the staff can tell me, or maybe people know right off. If we end up voting and Estacada votes it down in terms of the group, we make this big circle.
Yeah, then our strategy's wrong. Yeah,
Right,
I think I
right.
know where you're going, right?
Yeah.
So, what do we think about that, and how
Yeah.
that works out? And then finally, I think that the surveyors talked about making sure community involvement is in there. I think we still have a job in terms of making sure community understands what we're trying to do here, and that we're trying to make this the best plan we can, and as cheap and as effective and all the rest of things too. So we got a lot of community involvement, I think, in the future.
Yeah.
I'm pretty jazzed about it, though. I can see 65–70% of
Yeah, it's
people
awesome.
saying yes.
Right.
Wow.
Councilor Smallman, Lee.
So, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, with the exception of that I believe that the survey was very clear, having been part of the group that sat down with those questions. And I think that the feedback, you have to remember that we asked that question about going to a district very specifically. And so I think when people are looking at some of the amenities, and the reason that we put some of those amenities on there was to see what the voters' appetite was going to be. And provided that it goes to a district, maybe Estacada gets a dog park, right? That's something that would totally be on the table for a district. That isn't something that the city of Sandy would be paying for. That would be tax dollars that come out of its own budget, under its own board, and it becomes its own entity. So,
No, it would be, sorry, but to clarify, it would be part of this board, this
it'd be,
district.
but that's what I mean, the district, but it would, its own entity apart from the city, I guess
Oh,
is what
yes,
is what I'm
yes.
trying to say.
Can I respond real quick to you?
Yeah,
there?
absolutely.
One, I wasn't a part of the group that you guys obviously were.
I know.
I took it differently.
Gotcha.
So
Which
I-
means maybe a
That's fair.
survey taker. took
That's
it.
fair.
Right, right.
That's fair.
So
Yeah.
there are some things
Sure.
going both ways. So
Okay.
just and
I can
what
see
my
that.
point was is, let's just be aware of some of that.
Oh,
possible
sure,
confusion.
absolutely.
Go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
that's
you're
okay.
right.
That's all I had.
Yeah, we only have a little over 11 months left to have a plan and get it out to the voters. So I think the next thing is our work to come up with a plan.
That's right.
And I think that we should set aside the park district work while that occurs and leave it to the new board if one is elected to do that work, rather than to try to meld the two together at this point.
Well, I think that.
Park district or park plan master?
You mean the master plan?
You mean the master plan
The
itself.
master plan should be
So that I think.
set aside.
So I don't think I'm at a point to agree or disagree. That's something that's on my mind as well. I think we probably need to all sit down and really have a more a dedicated meeting towards that topic. In fact, I think a lot of the feedback we've been getting, Jordan and I, on the goal setting is let's stay really focused. And so I think the vast majority of our time at that goal setting should be on this and the district and all that. So
Agreed.
you look like you have something.
Clarify if you're going for a
So-
pool district or a park district,
or you're not ready to clarify that yet? That's.
If I can chime in on just,
Yeah.
you know, timelines and dates and things like that. I'm gonna start sounding like a broken record, I think, and apologies if I, you know, have to be more of the bearer of bad news, but I think it's really, really, really ambitious to try to get on the November 2020 ballot. I think we had testimony a couple months ago when we were kicking off this process that North Clackamas took, you know, 24 months from the period that we're at now, basically to have an idea formulated for voters to vote on. There's so many unanswered questions. For example, is an aquatic district or a parks district, does it include recreation services? What parks are going to be transferred to the new district? Is there any maintenance agreements that would be done between the city of Sandy and other agencies? The process to include other communities like Estacada and CPOs up the mountain that would be involved in the process, so we'd want them to have their input and to be a part of the process. And it's the unfortunate thing, it's not 11 months, it's actually 5 months, because we need to have the petition done by, I think, May 7th, submitted to the county. That includes how much is the tax rate, what are the boundaries of this new district, and things like that. So it is a huge push, a huge lift to, you know, get something that is, I think, well, you know, thought out and formulated in front of the voters in time for the November 2020 ballot. That being said, there's things that I think this council is interested in doing that may be outside that district that the city of Sandy might be interested in doing with the campus. And there's still all those questions too, of in terms of the asset of the campus. Does it transfer to a new district, or is that something that stays with the city of Sandy as a Sandy park? So I, you know, trying to you know, relay some more realism in terms of what we can actually achieve, knowing that it's going to involve RFPs, and maybe, you know, we've heard these recommendations on a, you know, a conservative expanded pool. Well, probably want to hire, you know, someone to kind of draw up some plans to generate some enthusiasm and you know, visualize what that improvement might look like, and then also some of those other trails and improvements that can happen at the campus. In terms of the 2 tracks on the parks plan, the idea from the get-go is that these will merge at some point, and actually the scope, you know, includes looking at the campus with the parks plan as well. So it's not the intention to keep them separate at all. I think it comes back to that timing on, you know, do we finish the parks plan first so we have an idea of what this community wants for their parks and recreation system and trail system.
What the Sandy community might want.
That's the Sandy community. But remember, there's like a similar process for any other community that we want to bring in. And, you know, I was just speaking today with the folks in Hoodland who have gone through a 2-year process just to come up with their plan for doing a parks district that's going to include 1 to 3 parcels up there on the November 2020 ballot, which again is a little confusing for people up there that there may be 2 districts on the ballot for them. And so, and they still may be interested in coming.
They don't have staff though, right?
Right, that's
Right.
all volunteer.
They don't have a
effort,
staff
right.
of 125 people
Right.
at their disposal.
Right,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the cost per person is going to be significant because of the small population.
So they may very well want to be brought in and be a part of that, our district, and know that,
Yeah, we'll
you know,
sort
they
it
have
out. It'll all get sorted.
the backing of the city
I don't
of
like being
Sandy.
surprised at meetings. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think, talk a lot about some great things that have come to my mind is where's our asset as a city, as the people that need to look after the best interests of the city of Sandy in the assets that we have in our parks and those type of things. And so I think, you know, we will talk about those things here and discuss those as we go forward, as we look at some of the issues that have gone on in the North Clackamas Parks and Rec District with Happy Valley. I think is a good bellwether of how things to be cautious on, as was brought up with you know, some of our other partnerships in the past have gone. But I really am encouraged by the survey and what it means, and how that survey could be for many different things, whether it's, you know, the whole Parks and Rec District as a whole, as it's been divided out, so that it gave us compartmentalizing out some of those areas or bringing in some of those areas for that. So I think in some ways a little bit early to take tonight and worry about some of those items without being able to discuss them out. I do think that it's a short timeline, but that's what we're dealt with. Those are the cards we're dealt with, and I think that we can be ambitious enough and to make it happen, because I think there is a value in the 2020 election that we don't get in 2021, we don't get in the May election, we don't get in 2022, and we're waiting until 2024.
And you lose enthusiasm every year.
So, you know, whether we need to bring on more staff or whatever we need to do to make that happen can be discussed at a future meeting that can be dedicated for that.
Great, thank you. Any other discussion?
John has
Oh, I'm sorry, John, yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, sounds like our next step is to figure out our date for our goal setting so we can get
Yeah.
moving on the next step on this, so.
Yeah. Yeah, my only comments were that I was very excited about the results and people in the committee know I was very stressed out with the committee. So I was encouraged at the big response from our community. I loved seeing how many people responded, both to our mailers and online, and then the overwhelming support for doing this project with us. So I like it.
Counselor Exner.
Real quick, I've already got 2 text messages today. It says, how do I get a copy of it?
We'll
Is it gonna be
post
on
it.
website
Yep.
and all that? Okay.
Is this the same thing we got an email of, or is
Yeah.
that more raw?
Right.
Okay.
You get the comments.
Okay.
All right, great.
All right, great. All right, moving forward, we will go to city manager report.
So you wanna talk about dates for the goal setting?
Yeah. That's my calendar. Yeah.
Got my calendar out.
This should be a fun exercise.
Right, so, I mean, we have one
These are
major
fun,
topic.
though.
That date doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And that
I'm just
doesn't work either.
practicing.
Whatever date it is, right? We pitched some other dates. One idea that we were, toying with is having it on an evening, for 3-4 hour meeting, however long we need, if we start at 6 p.m. or something, to talk about, goals. And as I've had discussions with the council, it sounds, like we're gonna be focused, we're gonna be talking about the community campus and this very topic we talked about tonight, and continuing our other big goals too. So I think it's something that we can achieve in an evening or a half day. It seems like weekends are pretty tough in January. It was hard to pin down a date that worked for everyone on a Saturday, so we looked at other evenings, and now it looks like we have a conflict on the 27th. So another idea is, perhaps a meeting in early February, and shuffling some things around during the night of a council meeting to make it goal setting, but that's gonna create some problems with some other business items that may have to be moved. So I'm open to ideas. If there's a date we can choose in January.
Friday the 17th. Everybody take a look at it?
At 6 p.m.?
Daytime.
Well, I'm working during the day,
I am
so
too. I take the day off.
maybe easier for you than I, so.
Not really.
What about any night that same week of the 27th except the 27th? Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday?
I would prefer Tuesdays or Wednesdays, but except for this 27th, I could kind of push things around a little bit and make it available.
So you're
I'm
talking
open
the
on a Friday,
28th?
I can't do the
17th?
28th, that's a
Can't
work
do the
day for me.
28th?
29th.
I can do the 29th.
28, 29, either one of those
29th?
two.
29th?
Yep.
Do
Go
we
in
have
once.
anything else going
Yeah.
on,
Go
Jordan?
in
Yeah,
twice.
I mean, it depends on
Yeah.
how early we start. I have a
Yes,
meeting
Wednesday
till
of the
6 that
month.
day.
We can
Tuesday or
find another
Wednesday, Tom.
location if there is a
Huh?
conflict.
Tuesday or Wednesday, you have your meeting.
Wednesday. Tuesday looks great for me, but
It doesn't
I
work
can do Wednesday. I can do either one.
is there anything
Or
the week
Thursday.
before so we can get on this sooner?
The 21st, 22nd?
I'm out Wednesday.
Twenty-
I'm
what
out
about
Wednesday.
21st?
I'm out Wednesday to Friday that week.
What about
Can we do the
Tuesday,
21st?
21st?
Yeah.
I'm out of state that day.
Okay.
That's a bad week.
23rd. You're out of
That's
state that
bad
week.
too.
Yeah, I'm out of state. I'm in
Oh.
DC.
See, I was gonna say yes, but I'm supposed to be on the beach
So
that
go
day,
back
so
29th.
The 15th?
29th?
Next week?
29th.
Mhm.
29th.
17 works for me
I
too.
could do the
29th,
15th.
29th,
In the evening?
29th in the
You're
evening?
saying? Okay.
How about the 15th?
Let's hold the 29th
Okay, yeah, I'm
first.
just trying to get it earlier.
Okay, everybody's good on the 29th. Now go
Yeah.
back to
Yes.
15th. This means sooner.
29, yep.
I can
That
do
would
that.
be a long evening though, probably.
15th? Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
I can do that even better.
15th?
15th?
Jan?
I've gotta look at my
She's looking.
calendar.
15th?
I can make
No.
15th?
If it's
I'll
in the
make it work.
evening, but not during the day.
Evening?
Evening?
Perfect.
15?
Yeah.
6
Okay.
o'clock, 15?
6 o'clock?
I just want everyone to know, I am rescheduling a meeting to make this happen. Just so everybody, all right?
That's
all
what
right.
mayors do.
All right, I'm just letting you know.
I'm on jury duty
Same.
that day, so
Yeah,
just
all right.
expect me not to be in the best mood.
All right.
so.
It's priority.
So, how early can people get here? Just because they anticipate it's gonna be a long meeting.
Anytime from noon on.
Okay. Can everybody make 5?
Give me
Oh,
five.
5.
Yeah.
5?
Five.
Okay, 5 on the 15th.
Jordan, that wasn't so bad.
I don't know why you couldn't get that done over email.
That's
no problem.
Hey, anytime you need help scheduling.
Just get you all
We
in the
just all need
room,
to be
sit
in the
down,
same
we're gonna
room.
figure
Yeah,
this
I'm glad that
thing
they
out.
got to witness what we
Okay,
couldn't
we
do
have
over
it.
the email. All right.
I believe
Yeah.
this room is available, but just double check to make sure there's not any special,
Okay.
The art
planning
commission's-
meetings or something. Art commission's not that night, so.
It is.
It is that night. All right, so we're gonna.
Is that a smaller
We
group
will
that can
move.
go
We
upstairs?
We can move them. We'll move them.
Yeah, we'll move them up.
Yeah,
Can
go
we
ahead.
move to the high school maybe?
All right. Well, we'll
figure
work
it
on
out.
logistics.
Just,
Yeah, it's a good idea.
can you send out a meeting invite with the location
Yeah.
that you pick?
Yep.
There we go.
and We'll get you guys dinner.
We'll let the community know too.
And that works. It's after the, we're meeting next Monday as a open house. The council will have an open house to get input on goals and other things that citizens have on their minds. And we'll do that at the community center, not the community campus, the community center, and do it in a roundtable format. So informally, people can come and sit down and chat with the city councilor and move tables and share their thoughts.
Monday.
And we'll have scribes there to take notes, and you'll have that input to take with you into the goal setting. We also have the online survey that's open right now for people to share their thoughts, anything that they have in their mind with the city council, and we'll continue to have that open until your goal setting. So sorry it took until 8:30 to introduce someone, but sitting here is Jeff Aprati. He is our new city recorder / management analyst. We're really excited to have Jeff join us. He brings a wealth of experience. He was actually a city manager for a small community in Oregon, the city of Wheeler, for a couple of years. He's, for the last several years, been working for Jensen Strategies, which is a local government consulting firm, so he has a lot of experience with goal setting and visioning, and his experience in Wheeler, included being a city recorder, a city manager, and everything else there. So he has a lot of local government experience. He has his master's in public administration from Portland State University. I had the pleasure of working with him briefly in Lake Oswego. Our paths crossed there, and I really enjoyed that experience with Jeff, and I'm really excited that he's able to join our team and help us out. So we're excited to have him. He starts officially, officially, today, but full-time on the 21st of this month. So after that, you'll see him at the goal setting, or at the next council meetings coming up. So
Great.
Welcome.
Yes.
I'm
Looking
happy
forward
to
to it.
have you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
To read into the record, we received a nice letter from Clackamas County. As you know, we've gone through a transition with our transit service, having to bring on board the drivers as temporary employees. And we got a letter from the Board of Commissioners at Clackamas County just thanking us for making that tough decision, and appreciating that we're continuing to deliver good transit services for Clackamas County and for Mount Hood Express. So that was very nice to get that letter of support and that outreach. So we appreciated that. And just a brief update on police interviews. Thanks again to Councilor Exner for participating with us on Friday. We interviewed, I think, another 8. Yeah. So the search continues for a couple new police officers, but we appreciate the panel support. I think we had a good panel again, and we got through the day, and hopefully we can fill those positions. So again, appreciate the help and support there. Looking forward to goal setting. Thanks for helping set that date finally.
Her question, Jordan.
Yep.
We did set the 15th. Do we need to maybe keep the 29th as a backup if we need more time?
To roll it forward.
It's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
We probably can talk for 3 or 4 hours on community campus,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Councilor Schultz.
No committee reports today. Just wanted to again say thanks to Martha and John for all your work on our survey. I was impressed at every meeting at their ability to take all the information we threw at them and turn it into something usable. So thanks for all of that. That's all I've got tonight.
Well, next, kind of quiet month. Had a little round of work in the hospitals, so that kind of put a kibosh on some of the things I went to. But I did go to the Art Commission meeting, and they're looking at the next year's worth of investments, you might call it. I know they got a couple of things done with murals that very impressed with and pleased to see that has happened this past year. And the second one that goes on the outside of the City Hall is still being worked on, and I appreciate the folks that are doing that. But they're looking at what might be as the investments for the upcoming year, what next should be worked on, and they'll be doing some workshop on that in the next month or so, and they'll be wanting to present that to the City Council when they get to that process through that way. So looking forward to seeing that part. Just real quickly, I did get involved in the police interviews, officer interviews. I'm always impressed by how people really want to be involved in being a police officer, and all the steps that it has to go through to make sure that that person is the right person, not only physically but mentally, and qualifications, all the other things that they have to go through. So I appreciate that, by the way. I want to make sure we have the right person making those stops or making those helps, and so great to be involved in that, and I appreciate that. So looking forward to seeing them selected. And that's it for me.
Councilor Lee.
Yes, I went to the transit board meeting, and the employees who are now driving the buses, who work for us instead of the contractor, really have hiked up their morale. Things are going very well over there, so I'm hoping that can work out on a more permanent basis if all goes well. And then there's a 20-year celebration coming up for the transit department. If I remember correctly, it's February 13th, is that correct?
Yeah.
There'll be a kind of an event that will be at the plaza where they will bring some of the buses and talk more about the expanded Mount Hood Express program, etc. The other thing was, I mentioned last time that I was going to be working on the policy committee of League of Oregon Cities, and they've now parceled it out into different units, so I'll be water, wastewater. So I'm going
That's
to
a good one.
hope to get your help, but we
Connection
are
there.
meeting in March and April to develop the budget for the long session in 21, so need ideas right away.
I have a couple.
We know where to
Bring
put
some
the money
examples.
anyway. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you.
Good for you.
Councilor Hamel.
Nothing to report.
Yeah, I don't really have anything either, other than, yeah, thank you very much, you guys. Great work on the survey, very impressed.
Just want to announce that we'll have our first kickoff economic development committee. Been a long year in process of kind of getting that put all together, but that will be on the 8th here. And typically it'll be the first Wednesday of the month, but because it landed on the 1st, this first one will be on the 2nd. But so that'll kick off here on the 8th. And then I was just curious on the monthly reports on our things, if we could get those updated. Some of them are 6-8 months outdated. So some of them are a couple outdated, a month or two, but those are important that we do read, and I appreciate those that put all the time into putting those in there. So
Parking standards came out of that, which we still haven't voted on, but good stuff comes
yeah,
out of it.
good stuff comes out of that we take back. But anyways, that's all I had.
Great. For me, thank you again. Thank you to the to Bethany and Lori for serving on the committee for the survey. I think
Yes.
questions were great and got great feedback from that tonight. You mentioned Wednesday's Economic Development Committee meeting. On Thursday, I'll be presenting the Sandy Connect meeting on Clackamas and statewide housing efforts that are going on right now. Friday's the meeting with ODOT. Are you going to that?
I won't make it.
Oh, you're not able to make it, okay. So Jordan and I will be going and doing that on Friday.
What's the status of the concept of that one? Are we talking about this sidewalk, or are we talking about downtown? What's the concept?
The 211.
Okay.
And the possible acquisition of portions of 211 by us.
Okay.
Okay. And then Monday is our committee feedback. Community feedback for our goal planning. And of course, we just set our goal setting date. So with that, thank you everybody for coming and being part of the survey experience. We're all really committed, working really hard to put together a plan for our community. So thank you very much. Thank you. Adjourned.
What are the hours on that goal setting?
It looks like we get